All right, we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Arknolia Bean and Dr. Earl W. Brown are back on the air after quite some time off. Uh, co-
Holidays.
Holidays, yes, exactly. And plus the move to Florida, just as well there. I know we did a couple of shows together involving music news and such. Me and Arknolia. And the reason being is because Wire did state that he's going to take some time off from this community, and he'll let me know when he is coming back to the scene there. So, of course, it's just as I said, it's just you and I, Ark, tonight, and
Right.
that's right. So, tonight we're going to be discussing something that you came up with, debut albums of various artists and bands out there that were good, bad, mediocre, so and so there. Because, debut albums are considered, the first step into the big time. The first album, I guess, is considered, the one that really either puts you on the map or puts you in the trash. Sometimes that first record can not do so well because it doesn't sound good or it sounds too mediocre or too cheesy. But sometimes, in a lot of cases, that first album can really put you on the map. Just as the case of Black Sabbath and Van Halen. Both their debut albums were massive big hits on the radio and with the record buyers. And they can definitely put you in the staple. I mean, like, look how many times Van Halen's first record still gets a lot of applause and approval by the new fans out there, as well as Black Sabbath's first album, the Ramones' first album, and of course, some albums that you have in mind are one of your favorites is just Chicago Transit Authority, which will later, of course, become Chicago.
Yeah, that was a massive debut. Two record set also. And at the time it looked like, oh, this is a prog rock band that's going to be big. And
Yeah,
then they went off into other areas.
other areas, mostly the soft rock regime there, and it was, of course, of course, of course, you cannot forget the fact that later on in the '80s, that's when he really became a soft rock staple there. When you think about it, there, thanks to
Yeah,
producer David Foster with some of his work with Shaka Khan and his old band Skylark, such and such there. So I guess it's safe to say that sometimes the first record doesn't always do that well and can go unnoticed. But they
and then the ones following are
most
somewhat better.
Yeah, exactly. Let me give you a prime example. You heard of this guy, Everlast. He was a member, you may remember, of the group House of Pain, which, they talk about, how rappers at the time would talk about black power this, black power that, black awareness. These guys were of Irish descent, and they put a shamrock in their crest logo with their name there. So I guess Irish power was their main thing with this group. We know their song Jump Around, which was a big radio and hip hop hit around there. I guess it was 90, 91, 92 there, you know. And of course, later on, he would, years later, after the dissolvement of that band, he would form a little project of his own. Basically, he would be a solo act. He would come up with that song "What It's Like," which is kind of a folky song there that still gets played on the either alternative or the rock radio circuit there. That was a big hit around, I guess it was 2000, 2001 there.
Right.
Yes. Now, a lot of people don't remember that back in 1989, he released his first record, Everlasting, on Sire Records. And at that time, he was signed on with Rhyme Syndicate Productions, which was headed up by Ice-T. And in a couple of interviews, he rather think himself as a musician other than a rapper, because he plays guitar such and such there. He even did a song with Carlos Santana, one of Carlos Santana's albums. I guess it was a Supernatural record. I guess it was some about Leave Your Lights On. I guess it was there. But
Right.
that was briefly played on the radio a few times there. Now, chances are that first record after Everlasting made it big, could have been re-released, but it wasn't. It just went away and never heard from again there. That was a different case with the Wallflowers, featuring, of course, Bob Dylan's son Jacob. They had that big hit with that one record, bringing down the horse with the song One Headlight, Sixth Avenue Heartache. Back in 1992, they released their self-titled debut album. That went nowhere. That was on a different label. When the Wallflowers made it big a few years later, with the songs that I mentioned, that record label, Virgin, reissued that first record, because obviously they owned the rights to that album.
Right.
Exactly.
Then you got people like Billy Joel, whose
Mm-hmm.
first album was something called Cold Spring Harbor.
Oh, I heard about that record.
Which is not a bad album, but it's not anything like his later releases.
No, because apparently there was a screw up with the engineering process that made his record sound like a Chipmunks record there. I guess it finally got reissued and remastered and fixed up finally for the official release. I guess the boys at Columbia Records decided, let's do this record justice because, Billy didn't deserve it. And after being in the business for 50 years, why not? And this was,
Right.
I guess, around the early 80s or 90s when this project took place.
It was originally released in 1971. I don't know that later.
Yeah, it is true there. And of course, one record that never really got to really be reissued. I guess it may have been reissued on indie labels. Was his rock band Attila? It was yeah. It was him and just some guy whose name I don't know, who was a drummer. Billy did the vocals, which sounded a little bit different than what he normally does.
Yeah, that record doesn't sound anything like Billy Joel's in it.
Yeah, it's a lot more heavier, a lot more organ driven. Something like kind of in the favor of the Uriah Heep crowd. Needless to say, there.
Which their debut album,
Oh yeah,
I believe, was called Very Heavy, Very Humble.
Yeah, that was the UK version. The US version was simply called Uriah Heep, plain and simple. And it had and each album, most of their albums had different covers. The second album, Salisbury, had two different covers, one in the UK, one in the States as well there. Very Heavy, Very Humble was a creepy looking cover there. It featured a guy. If you ever saw the cover, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that album was it didn't show you what was to come. I mean, there were some decent songs on it.
Yeah.
But
Gypsy
it
was one of them.
Yeah. Of course, I like the live version on the later live album better, but that's personal taste.
Yeah. But the cover of Very Heavy, Very Humble was very creepy when you think about it there. I mean, like, here's a guy who's a guy, I guess he had a mustache, his mouth was wide open like in a tense shock, and he was covered with all these cobwebs, spider webs and such there. Creepy when you look at it there. But
yeah.
But then again, rock bands at that time were drifting towards the more darker, creepy sounds, along with Black Sabbath, whose first album we definitely got to talk about later on.
That was a good album.
Yeah, it was awesome album, breaking album there. But Uriah Heep's album, I was listening to it one time at my old workplace there, the golf club, working on the prep chefing there, and it was a pretty good record when you think about it there. It was. Now, keep in mind, as I mentioned, Uriah Heep had different covers for both the U.S. and the U.K. a few times there. Innocent Victim was another one. The U.S. version had a collage of the band photos that lined up at that time, while the UK version had a mean-looking full frontal face view of a snake with a little bit of blood dripping from its mouth. Looked like it just attacked someone. It's looking at you like, bitch, you're next.
Yeah.
And playing that was freaky right there. And of course, the second record, Salisbury, the U.S. version had this, I know it's a kind of a drawing of some sort of I don't know what it is, but it was a very weird ass drawing. It was like a figure in black with a red background. It kind of like something looked like, oh, I forgot the Polish artist who, his name there because it's hard to pronounce, obviously, but it was similar of this particular artist. Needless to say, you have to look on it.
Yeah.
Now, the UK version had an elderly man in a tank, British tank there, over a ledge there. And I'm not too sure what the whole story is about that one there. But credit to Uriah Heep for coming up with different album covers for basically, no, let me put it the best way. 4 or 5 different covers for the same album. Needless to say there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, we have one that which brings up Black Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that record was massive. We know the story behind the album. It was recorded in less than a day, with virtually live, with a couple overdubs here and there. And of course, we know the album. We know the location of the album cover where it was shot, and it was at a water mill in Oxfordshire, England. And the cover, the lady that was on the cover was a 19-year-old gal named Louisa Livingstone, who is on Twitter right now. And she composes music of her own, which is on YouTube under a different name. She's 65 years old currently. You know, she has a little bit of gray, red, kind of like a fading red hair there. She said in an interview that she was completely nude underneath that robe. It was extremely cold outside. There was a whole bunch of different versions of the photo shoot that didn't really make it on there. Some were too suggestive. Then they decided, to picture her just holding the cold clothes there, to keep herself warm a bit, and then to have that iconic album cover right there.
Yeah. And I can remember back in 69, 70, I was working at a store called Gibson's, which is kind of like Kmart, Walmart, whatever. It was a discount type store.
I see there.
And I kind of watched over a little bit on the music section, and I saw this 8-track come in by a group called Led Zeppelin.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I knew nothing about them. So I pulled it out. I said, it's interesting. Popped it in there. And the first song on the first track was Good Times, Bad Times.
Mm-hmm.
And I listened to that and went, whoa, this is good.
It is.
Listen to that whole thing. That's a great debut album.
Absolutely, it still is.
Fantastic debut album.
And plus,
now they did do others that I like a little better, but that is a good album.
It is absolutely there. One of their big ones there, including, of course, the Dazed and Confused. We know the story behind that song.
Right.
Black Mountain. I guess it was Black Mountain High. I think it was that instrumental that did on the acoustic guitar. Jimmy Page did.
Right.
Yes. Of course, Your Time Is Going to Come. And, of course, the closing track, How Many More Times.
Oh, man.
Definitely there. That was a badass tune right there.
And Dazed and Confused basically introduced me to John Bonham and his drumming. Because the drumming in that song is fantastic.
I've seen a couple of YouTubers, black up and rising YouTubers, do their reaction to Dazed and Confused, and this one brother was like, "Oh, how do you make that noise, man? How do you do that, man?" Well, simple. Jimmy Page has a violin bow. I guess it was a resin wax, I think it was called. It was pulling it across the strings there like a violin.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it was done there. I tried to do that one time because I found this one violin bow at a Goodwill store back in Michigan, and I tried a little bit, but I had to have the particular wax to make it complete there, unfortunately. So,
right.
Yeah. And by the way, we know what inspired the cover of that album right there, the
The
Heidelberg,
Hindenburg.
the Hindenburg. Yes, there was the Hindenburg blowing up like it did. That was wow. I remember watching a couple of. I remember watching a couple of a TV special about the detailing about the people and the passengers on the Hindenburg. And it was like
Right.
wow.
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of that stems from when Jimmy Page was talking to friends, including Keith Moon of The Who,
Hmm.
about putting this band together and doing this.
Yep.
He's the one that kind of coined the phrase of,
Sink
yeah, this
like a
band's going
lead
to,
balloon.
yeah, you're going to go over like a lead balloon.
Yeah, exactly. And once you
And
know,
they kind of,
and that kind of gave an idea for not only the name, but once you know, Page would have the last laugh. Because I remember reading them back in the 80s there that Led Zeppelin still remains the top selling act on the Atlantic Records record label there.
right.
Yeah. And who can blame them? Zeppelin knew what the hell they were doing at that time. It was like a roller coaster ride with their music there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another group that did an interesting debut album was Deep Purple.
Oh, yeah.
They
Yeah.
did Shades of Deep Purple with Mark One,
Yep.
which is a good album,
Yeah,
but it
very
is
good.
absolutely no indication of what's to come.
Yeah.
I mean, it's when they hit album number 4, which I don't remember what it is.
May
But
have
the
been
first,
in, I think it may have been in rock, if I'm correct.
I think so.
Yeah.
And it
Had
was
that
the
record.
first one with Mark II
Mm-hmm.
because they released 3 with Mark One
Yes.
and then hit that one with Mark II.
Yes.
And it basically is totally different. It's almost like a new release from a new band. But don't get me wrong, the first 3 Deep Purple albums are not bad. They're good. They're different.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely there. But it was the Mark. Well, I guess it took the Mark II lineup to really get things moving for the group there. That's the lineup that really made its mark there.
Yeah, In Rock, Fireball, Machine Head.
Mm-hmm. Who do you think
Uh,
we are?
right. There's another one in there somewhere, I think, but I can't remember the name of it.
Let's see. I'm not too sure. We're talking the Mark II lineup, by the way there.
Right.
Of course, we already mentioned, and either way there. Now, sometimes debut albums, well, basically, sometimes I know in the hip hop genre, often the first record often introduced the artists, as how they rap and how they style their songs. But it's still after the second record when their true identity and their purposes are known.
Right.
Two examples: Ice-T and Public Enemy. Ice-T's first record, Rampage, was kind of like a considered hip hop kindergarten. Basically it was a little bit of rapping about thugs, pimps, and all that stuff there. But it was the second record, Power, which came out a couple years later, that really introduced the world to what Ice-T was talking about, the gangster rap genre there. Another example, Public Enemy. Their first record, Yo Bum Rush a Show from '87, was kind of like a beginner's there. They were talking about, can't wait to get in my car and blast my tape. Yo Bum Rush a Show, search my body for fucking what? My gun don't shoot and my knife don't cut, songs about my 98 is what you need to fear. It was on the second record, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. That's where they let their black awareness known to the whole world with songs like Bring the Noise, which later they did with Anthrax. You may recall that collaboration in 1991 there. Song Black Steel in the Hour of Chaos, which by the way was about a black man being jailed for not going into the army after being drafted. Of course, Party for Your Right to Fight. They were talking about how the black man was being condemned by being screwed over by the government, blah, blah, blah. We've heard it many times before in other future records that they will put out there. I guess they're still doing that stuff now and there. But sometimes the first record is often used to get your foot in the door. That's when you lay the smack down there. And then the perfect examples of Ice-T and Public Enemy, that definitely does so.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Elton John, his first album was something called Empty Sky,
Oh, wow.
which is okay. And not a bad album. In fact, it was re-released later.
Yeah.
But it's got some good stuff on it. Offhand, I can't tell you any of the names of the song. Well, let me look.
All right, there. And I believe this was a release on a different label, I guess.
Yes, it was.
Oh, yeah, because throughout the 70s, MCA was Elton's label throughout for that decade. He later switched over to Geffen Records in the early 80s there and went back to MCA, which remained for many years there. I guess he has his own record label called Rocket Records, or back then it was the Rocket Record Company there.
Well, the only song here that I know off the top of my head is Lady Samantha.
Ah, interesting there.
But a lot of the other songs, I have probably heard them, but I don't recognize them by their titles.
Yeah.
But that's generally true in a lot of cases.
Yeah, sure. Okay, we got to bring up this first album, the band Boston.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Talk about a debut album that
bulldozed everything. And it certainly did. That I forgot how many units that album was sold and as a whole there, and it still sells to this very day there. And it took 5 years. Took 5 years for it to come out. And because the guy behind the project, Tom Schultz, he's one of those guys that wants to make sure everything is perfect on the record. The production, the songwriting, the playing, the notes are being played, how the drum sounds and everything else. Because he vowed in his heart never to give a second-rate album just to fill the pockets of his record label or his own. In fact, here's something else. The second record, Don't Look Back, it came out a couple years later, but he insists that the songs for that record was meant for side one. And it took 8 years for Third Stage, another 8 years for Walk On, and another 8 and so years for the other records there.
I still think the first one was the best.
Yeah, that's what you're
but that's again a personal opinion.
Yeah, a lot of people would agree on that one. I mean, the songs on it, Rock and Roll Band, Foreplay / Piece / Long Time, those are still classics to this day there. Let Me Take You Home Tonight.
More Than a Feeling.
Oh, yeah, that was the big
Peace
song.
Peace of Mind.
Yeah, that was the big song. Of course, Smokin'.
Right.
Hitch a Ride. Something About You. All those records there.
Okay. There's a little band by the name of Styx.
Oh, yeah. They
released their first album on Wooden Nickel.
Yeah, which, by the way, is I remember a theme. Remember, they had Styx 2 at a neighbor's house, though that's the one with Lady on it.
Right.
And Styx was mostly kind of prog in their way. Well, basically, Dennis Young was more prog when you think about it.
Well, they're still considered largely, other than, of course, Dennis DeYoung stuff, a prog band.
Yeah.
There's a lot of their stuff that, if you listen to it, it's like, yeah, that's got some elements of prog in it.
Yeah.
And while we're on prog...
Yes, right. King Crimson?
Well, yeah, the one with In the Court of the Crimson King.
Oh, yeah. That's the one that people still look toward when it comes to King Crimson. The album cover, the songs on it, the main opening song, 21st Century Schizoid Man. People still look to that record as one of the prime King Crimson albums there in the prog rock movement. In fact, you even said it was one of the first prog rock albums to really make it big there.
Yeah, that was a phenomenal album, I remember.
It was, yeah. Well, of course, for me, it was it was a second and third record like Lizard and In the Wake of Padizian that really got me hooked. I later picked up the first record and then Islands and so on there.
Oh yeah, and there's a ton of albums, different formations.
Yeah, the different lineups. I think right now, in fact, I don't know if you ever check this out. Robert Fripp has a thing, has his own YouTube channel, which he does little details with his wife Tonya Wilcox, where he plays various songs from the '80s Crimson era there, which he often discuss the here and there. You know, it gives a view. Shows us his backyard and everything else where they live. You know, he keeps himself busy. Now I don't know if Crimson is on tour. I guess Crimson is on tour right now, if I'm correct. There, it's called the Music Is Your Friend tour, and of course it's a seventh lineup featuring a 7-man there. It's a 3 drummers, saxophone player, bass player, and 2 guitars. One of them being, of course, Fripp himself there. And I know you would. I know a lot of people would agree on this. Do you think it's time that him and Adrian Belew should make amends and work together again?
Oh, that was a phenomenal lineup.
Yeah, it's
I'm
like
not going to say the best because it's, subjective,
yeah,
but pretty darn close.
yeah, because there was a falling out between Fripp and Belew there. I guess in the in the mid 2000s there. So which Fripp later got Jacko so and so on to do vocals and guitar there. And I guess on the past couple of tours with this 7-man lineup, they decided to go back to some earlier songs like Starless, Easy Money, The Talking Drum, even 21st Century Schizoid Man, which they hadn't played live in God knows how long. How many years there?
Then you got Genesis. Their first album is something called From Genesis to Revelation.
Yep, that's where he got the
name.
name.
Not worth the effort.
Really?
It's not that good.
Oh, wow.
Compared to their later works, it's not bad.
Yeah.
But compared to the later works, it's kind of like, how a little toddler will start walking.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said,
it's kind of similar to that kind of concept.
Like I know, I like I said earlier, sometimes the first album are considered kindergarten, learning to walk. That's when you start learning your trade in the later years, or actually on the second record, needless to say there. That's when the second record is when you reach your teenage years, needless to say there.
I don't remember what the second record was off the top of my head. It might have been
You ever see Crime?
Either that or Foxtrot.
Oh, yeah. On one of those 2 records. And we're talking the original Genesis here. Phil
with
Collins,
Peter Gabriel.
Peter Gabriel, Steve Hackett, Michael Rutherford, and Tony Banks, and, of course, Phil Collins.
Yeah. Collins was in the band.
Yeah, exactly. He was a drummer, yeah. He would not become the frontman until after Gabriel's departure later on in the 70s.
Yeah, that's funny because the story goes that they were looking at all kinds of people and trying to say, who can we get in? Who can we get in?
Yeah.
And then Phil kind of steps up and says, I can do it. And I already know the songs.
Yep.
And they listened to him and said,
You're in.
This will work.
You're in. There you go there. All right, nice.
Okay, next group is Yes.
Oh,
Their debut is something called Yes.
Yeah, that's right. The self-titled debut album.
And some of the significant songs was Looking Around, Every Little Thing, which is Beatles cover.
Yep.
Survival, Every Days, which is a Buffalo Springfield cover.
All right.
And it's not a bad album. It's pretty good.
I've yet to hear it. I've only heard songs from going back to just the Yes album. And with songs like I've Seen No Good People and Starship Trooper there. Of course, The Clap, which was which, by the way, it was a live recording that which was an acoustic piece that Steve Howe had performed in front of an audience, and everyone was just clap along with him as he played there. That's kind of like a Yes tradition, needless to say there.
Yeah. Their second album was one called Time and a Word, which
Hmm.
actually wasn't a bad album.
Yeah, I just remember seeing
It's a good
that.
album.
Yeah, that's good. I gotta check these two records out sometime soon there.
They're both good. I mean, they're no close to the edge or anything of that nature, but they're both good.
Yeah.
And another group that had a good debut album was Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Oh yeah, the first record. Yeah, Keith Emerson from The Nice, Carl Palmer from the Crazy World of Arthur Brown, and Greg Lake
Atomic Rooster.
and Greg Lake from King Crimson.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess, Greg Lake saw that Crimson was crumbling around him and decided, you know what, I'm out of here. But we and my boy Keither, we recommended this new drummer for your new lineup, which will later play on the third record, Lizard. But that's a different story.
Yeah. And that's the album that has Lucky Man, which is easily their biggest charter.
Exactly. And plus the piece Take a Pebble, which is a
Oh,
long track.
that is classic. There's a lot of Keith Emerson in that one.
Yeah, exactly there. Plus, Tank, which features the great solo from Carl Palmer as well there.
Knife Edge.
Yeah, another good song there when you think about it. I mean, if it's to say that ELP definitely was probably one of the most successful, multi-successful prog rock bands out there, because you look at the outside cover for Emerson, Lake and Palmer in concert, and you see how many people in this massive stadium. Holy
That's
gee
a great
whiz.
3-record set.
Wow. Well, that was a different one. This was just the one you're referring to was Welcome Back, My Friends, to the Show That Never Ends, ladies and gentlemen, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And that was an entirely different album. The one I referred to was simply just called In Concert. It was a single
I
album.
remember that one. Yeah.
Yes. And you look at the outer cover of that album, you see how big that place they were playing, how massively huge that venue was. I don't know if it was a football stadium or arena, or I don't know, Wembley. It must have been a Wembley Stadium. I'm not too sure, but it was freaking huge, man.
Yeah. Now, another group that their debut album had no way of showing you what was to come, but it was good. Pink Floyd, Piper at the Gates of Dawn.
Oh yeah, with Sid Barrett. I guess that's one of the first only few records that feature Sid as a whole. The second record,
He was on the second one, but he wasn't
yeah,
totally there.
one track, Jug Band Blues, and that was the closing track for that album, which was, by the way, the second record, A Saucerful of Secrets.
Right.
Yes, that was about it. Gilmour was brought in, to keep in mind, as kind of like a backup in case Sid would do something loopy there, would stand still for no reason there. Because at that time, the Sid's behavior was getting way massively out of control there. So Gilmour was brought in as a backup, and he ended up being the permanent singer and guitarist and contributor to the band.
Yeah. But that first album is not a bad listen. It's got some great tracks on it.
Plus the opening track, Astronomy Dotomy, which is one of the early classics there.
Yeah. Does that album have... Oh, God.
Which one is it?
Careful with that Axe Eugene, or is that later?
I think Careful. I think that one was later. The one I remember was on the Amagama album.
Oh, yeah.
Which
That's
came
a
out
live version.
Yeah, it's a live version there. I'm not too sure. Let me look it up there. Okay. Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Let me see here. Should be coming up pretty sick there. Okay. Okay, there we go there. Okay, it was the debut studio album by Pink Floyd, released in August in 1967 in Columbia, which is over Okay, as Wikipedia is coming up right now, and it's the only Pink Floyd album. I hate when this happens. Little pop-ups coming in here. Blah blah blah. I guess Wikipedia is asking for donations to keep their page going up there.
Yeah.
It was the only Pink Floyd album under the leadership of Syd Barrett on vocals and on guitar. He wrote all but 3 tracks on the album, contributing compositions by Roger Waters, Dick Mason, and Richard Wright. It followed the album's followed the band's early chart success with the singles "Arnold Lane" and "See Emily Play," as well
Yeah.
as their influential performances at the UFO Club in London.
And they did. This album had Interstellar Overdrive,
Yeah,
which is a phenomenal instrumental.
yeah, it's exactly. Yeah. By the way, you gotta check out the Floyd doing their live version with Frank Zappa accompanying them on the guitar there.
Wow.
Yeah, this was in '69 at some of the Swedish music festival there. They were the Swedish man introduced both them, and before they got to the track there, Roger Waters, I guess, is giving them a rundown how the song is played and such there. It's pretty interesting to view. Definitely worth checking out. Now, I know there's photos. In fact, I'll find one photo right now, and then I'll send it to you in the Skype chat here for you to check out there. Now, we also got to bring up the first album from one album that really showed the world what was going to be coming was the Ramones' first record. Songs like "Beat on the Brat," "I Don't Want to Go Down to the Basement," of course, the opening track bleh, Blitzkrieg Bop. Hey, oh, let's go. That still remains a classic to this very day. There. That's and in fact, I remember hearing that at the Kroger loudspeakers one time
Hmm.
when I was working night shift. That was in the 2006 there when I was still working for that company.
Now here's an interesting debut album.
Mm-hmm.
This is by a band that, to me, was one of the precursors of metal,
Mm.
Blue Cheer,
Oh yeah.
Vincibus Eruptum.
Mm-hmm. The one with
When that
the
thing came out, there was nothing going on like that.
exactly. That's why it's safe to say that them and Cream were one of the first power trios out there.
And actually, Fresh Cream was a decent debut.
Absolutely, there. That's true. There. It's kind of funny, You also got to bring about 2 only albums from certain projects there. We got to bring up these 2 album items here. Actually, there's 3. First is the Blind Faith album. They made this
One
one.
and done, but that's a great album.
Yeah, and of course, we know the controversy about the original front cover. A 12-year-old
Right.
girl, bare-breasted, holding up a silver, shiny model plane, something like that. And that cover got censored a lot of times, believe it or not.
Hmm.
Yeah. Of course, the only album, the Sex Pistols. Never mind the Bullocks. Here's the Sex Pistols. Their only official release. Never mind the other releases that came out in the 80s there, which were mostly bootleg recordings and live recordings there.
Right.
Yes, that was one angry record there when you think about it there. It showed what was going on at London, England at that time. There was a lot of unemployment, a lot of economic issues there, and that's what helped fueled the punk rock scene there. And also lots of poverty when you think about it there, because John Lydon admitted that he used to use safety pins to keep his clothing together because him and his mom couldn't afford anything at that time.
Yeah. Then you have Steppenwolf in their debut,
Oh yeah.
and that is possibly their best album.
Mm.
But they still had other releases that were good.
Yep.
But that first one, holy cow! When I got that and started playing it, I was like, "This is good."
Oh yeah. Another good one. Lonesome Crow by the Scorpions. Now this record came out, I forget it's about, I think, I'm not too sure when it came out, 71, 73 there, but it was one of the first records to feature Rudolph and Michael Schenker together. Now, Schenker would later go on to be the guitarist for the band UFO for a good number of years, and then later with the Michael Schenker group. Now, the first record, Lonesome Crow, was kind of like, it was not that heavy as it would later on, later releases like, In Trance or Love Drive or Love at First Sting, but it was more, had a little more prog rock feel to it.
Yeah.
When you think about it there. Definitely. I mean, the title cut was like a 13-minute piece there. But look for the video for "I'm Going Mad." You see Klaus Meany with a mustache, which is a very rare thing to see there, along with Michael and Rudolph together there. In fact, there's one point where the camera zooms out to the band and the location that they're filming. Rudolph is throwing away a handbrush he had in his hand and continued playing and miming along with this song there. It's really noticeable right there, man.
Okay, another group that basically stayed intact until they broke up. Their debut album, Meet the Beatles.
Oh my gosh, yes. And that was what it was called here in the States. In the UK,
Right.
It was With the Beatles. That's what it was called there. Same cover, different titles.
Yeah, they had some different lineups on it, but generally when I'm speaking albums, I'm speaking the US versions because,
Yeah.
hey, that's what I know.
Yeah, that's right. So did I, man. I was very surprised when I saw when Capitol EMI started releasing their records on compact discs. I was like, wait a minute. I thought they were going to do the ones we know here in the States. Turns out it was the original UK ones there. So I can imagine my frustration when I saw the Help CD. I was like, wait a minute, where are the instrumental scores? Like,
Right.
yeah, because the scores that I forgot that I don't know the guy who did the instrumental scores for the movie and the soundtrack there, but they're pretty damn good.
Yes, they are.
There were, yeah. So I know Capitol even put it out the U.S. Capitol albums, which featured all the Capitol albums like the Beatles' second album, Yesterday and Today, Beatles 65, the Help soundtrack. And I think right now Capitol should release those albums on vinyl, since vinyl is the thing nowadays.
Yeah.
You look at nearby Walmart, you see all this vinyl and a little teeny stack of CDs. It's like, holy cow.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
I know, but you know what? Vinyl is what we originally listened to music on.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
I had, I'll say 4,000 records.
Oh, man.
Ended up finally having to get rid of them.
Wow.
Economic reasons.
I had to leave behind. When I moved to Texas from Michigan back in early 2014, I had to leave behind all my vinyl collection, all my cassettes, all my CDs. So obviously when I got my first computer at that time, first thing I'm going to do is start looking up these albums I used to own. Get me a couple of MP3s and put them on my phone, the MP3,
Right.
such and such and such there. So I pretty much got all that I really needed there. Plus now with the reissue, some of these albums are coming out. I may want to just buy them up once again. Pink Floyd, The Wall,
Yeah.
Sad Wings of Destiny by Judas Priest. And speaking of Judas Priest, we got to talk about their first record, Rock-a-Rolla. Now, it wasn't that it was heavy, but a more prog rock sense when you think about it there. The winter, the 3-part winter sweet piece. It was basically winter retreat, and winter something there. It was a 3-parter there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Then you have the Rolling Stones, English newest hit makers.
Absolutely there. And they would become newest hit makers next to the Beatles.
Yeah. Then you had the Animals, House of the Rising Sun album.
Oh, I didn't know it was on. I didn't know they had that album with that name there.
I'm not sure that was the name of it, but it was the one with House of the Rising Sun.
The one I remember was from my old dad's collection. It was called "The Best of the Animals."
Yeah, but that was a
I
compilation
know.
of them.
Yes, that was the only thing we had so far.
I'm going to see if I can find the Animals
First record
and,
there.
yeah, what it was called. I had it.
Mm.
It was one of the ones I had.
And by the way, going back to the only albums this project or that project released, we got to mention this underground group, the Masked Marauders. Apparently, it's also featured the Mick Jagger and Bob Dylan in this project there. And one song I remember hearing from this project was a song called "Can't Get No Nookie."
Mm.
Now, the album does not list who the members of the group were or any of that there. It was just, a little thing on the back detailing the, the sound, the style of this band, and how they definitely need to be listened to by the public. But that's the only album I remembered. I should probably look it up since we're on the subject here because.
The first album by the Animals was named The Animals.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And let me see, besides House of the Rising Sun, what else was on it?
That's right.
Okay.
Okay, there.
Girl Can't Help It. Baby, Let Me Take You Home. Talking About You.
Right.
Around and Around.
All right.
I'm in Love Again. Gonna Send You Back to Walker. This is some good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Memphis, Tennessee. The Chuck Berry song.
Mm.
I'm Mad Again. John Lee Hooker.
All right.
Animals were one of the ones that really covered a lot of the R&B.
Yeah, because R&B was big England at that time there. You could hear with the Stones, the Beatles, the Animals. They really embraced the blues. They really embraced black artists. Definitely, no doubt. Which probably explained the good reason why Jimi Hendrix moved from Seattle to England there.
Yeah. And the band that Jimi Hendrix opened for, that would surprise a lot of people.
The Monkees.
Yep.
Yeah, that's definitely a big folk. That's definitely an interesting tale, and I guess he got a boot off the tour for being way too loud for such a teeny bop audience there. Featured of preteens and kids there. Okay, The Masked Marauders. It's a record album released on the Warner Brothers Reprise deity label in the fall of 1969 that was part of an elaborate hoax concocted by Rolling Stone magazine. Rolling Stone ran a tongue-in-cheek review of the non-existent album that basically captured a super session of the era's leading rock and roll musicians, featuring Paul McCartney, John Lennon, George Harrison, Mick Jagger, and Bob Dylan. The review claimed that none of the artists could be listed on the album jacket because of contractual agreements with their record labels.
Right.
The editors involved decided to extend the joke by hiring a relatively obscure band to record an actual album and then secure a deal with Warner Brothers as an indication of how many people were taken in by the joke. The Masked Marauders reached 114 on the Billboard's album charts. So basically it was a spoof band.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting there. I don't know.
Of course, the Traveling Wilburys had a good debut.
Yeah, it's true there. And this
Of course,
was
look who was in the band.
exactly. You know what else kind of funny? Jeff Lynne and Bob Dylan are the only ones remaining of that group.
Right.
Roy Orbison passed away in '88. Harrison died in 2001, and Tom Petty died in 2017.
Yeah. Well, they had intended to continue, but once Roy Orbison died, they pretty much Roy's gone. Let's not do this anymore.
Well, they did put out one album without Roy titled Volume 3 back in 1990, if I remember that. Yeah, that kind of like didn't do so big as the first record there. Right. Sadly, sometimes when that key member is gone, everything just went, and
Yeah,
things are not the same anymore.
yeah.
Oh, here's the thing. But by the way, we got to include this album, Appetite for Destruction, Guns and Roses, 1987.
Which basically, in my mind, was the only really good album they did.
Yeah. Well,
But that's my thinking.
yeah, but and that's the one that gets more played more than the other records. Like, well, Guns N' Roses didn't really release that much records. Afterwards, they just had Use Your Illusion #1 and #2, and the Spaghetti Incident, and then that one live record of all live recordings back in the later '90s there. But that was it.
Yeah. Then there's The Monkees.
Oh yeah, I had that album.
Theme from The Monkees.
Right.
Saturday's Child.
Mhm.
I Want to Be Free. Tomorrow's Going to Be Another Day.
Mhm.
Poppy Jean's Blues.
Yep.
Take a Giant Step. Last Train to Clarksville.
Mhm.
This doesn't seem to be my day. Let's Dance. I'll Be True to You. Sweet Young Thing.
Mm.
And then a kind of a novelty song, Gonna Buy Me a Dog.
Oh yeah. I think I remember seeing the little music segment on the TV show about that, where how members of the Monkees playing with all these little doggies there.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely done for fun.
Yeah, it's definitely. You know what? Any all these Facebook, dog lovers groups on Facebook should definitely make a video of that song. They should probably put that piece that I mentioned, "Gonna Buy Me a Dog" with all of them that I mentioned as an official music video. No doubt all these dog appreciative groups on Facebook, Twitter, such and such, they would definitely they would embrace that video. No doubt about that.
Yeah.
Right. Of course.
Okay. Go ahead, because I'm looking up another one.
I'm looking up another album, trying to find another album here. Let's see there. You also got to bring up. Oh, there was this one album. We got to bring up Metallica's "Kill 'Em All." This record came out in 1983. It was, I guess they called it the trendsetter, not really the trendsetter, but the start of the thrash metal movement. Hit the Lights, Four Horsemen, Seek and Destroy, still a favorite, Metal Militia, Phantom Lord, No Remorse. I first heard of this group back in 1983, as I said, on a Warren, Michigan-based radio station out of a high school. I still remember the call letters. I don't know if the station is still functioning, whichever there, but that a couple of times, I don't know what time they would play this stuff, but they would play Slayer from their first record, Metallica. They would play non-album tracks by Iron Maiden, except other bands as well there, under local band, many other bands as well there. They had the members of the group Halloween, a well-respected Detroit-based metal band there in the studio. And but Kill 'Em All was definitely one of the big ones that really started the thrash metal movement. Because look how many other bands would come emerge, like Exodus, Exciter out of Toronto, Canada. A band called Ledge Lord, Power Mad, all these other bands. Of course, we cannot. Oh yeah, Anthrax as well out of New York City. Of course, we cannot forget Megadeth, whose lead guitarist and singer was a member of Metallica up to his brutal firing that same year prior to the recording of Kill 'Em All.
Okay. Another band, not obscure because of the lead singer going on to her solo,
Mm-hmm.
Them.
Ah, Van
Their de-
Morrison.
their debut album in America was called Them.
Mm-hmm.
And among the songs that it had on it was
Gloria.
Mystic Eyes, which is a great song,
Mm.
Gloria, uh, their version of, well, I thought Baby Please Don't Go was on that album
Mm. Hmm.
because they did a great version of Baby Please Don't Go.
I see there. Yeah.
And their big hit at the time, Here Comes the Night.
Ah.
And of course, you mentioned Gloria.
Yeah, it's right there. Which was later covered by The Doors, Jimi
Right.
Hendrix, and the Patti Smith Group.
And the Blues Magoos.
That's right.
They did a 6-minute psychedelic version,
Oh yeah.
which is pretty phenomenal, actually. And speaking of them, their debut album was Psychedelic Lollipop.
Oh,
The big song on there was the hit.
right. I'm gonna look it up
You
there.
Ain't Seen Nothing Yet.
Mm,
I was trying to think of the name of it.
right there. So I was thinking up. I'm gonna look up the story behind Gloria. No, because what the story is about there. Because it's about, I guess the lyrics describe a lady. Well, the Hendrix version, basically. It was basically the Hendrix version of Glory that I remember was a woman that comes up there knocking on the door, makes love to you, and blah blah blah. There. Now,
Yeah.
according to Van Morrison, he wrote the song Gloria while performing with the Monarchs in Germany in the summer of '63. At just around the time he turned 18 years old, he started performing with the Maritime Motel. When he returned to Belfast, he joined it up to the Gamblers to record them. Formed the band. No, actually, formed the band known as Them. He would ad-lib the lyrics that he performed, sometimes stretching the song to about 15 or 20 minutes. After signing a contract with Decca Records, Them moved to London for a recording session at Decca 3 Studios in West Hampstead on 64. And one of the songs that they recorded that day was, of course, Gloria. And I'm looking for the story behind it. Oh, yeah. The Shadows of Night recorded that song. The
Oh
Door.
yeah.
Yep.
They had a hit in the mid part of the country with that one.
Oh, yeah.
I was familiar with it. I liked it.
Nice. Yeah. Patti Smith Group, as I mentioned, she did it on her record, Horses. He did a version with Van Morrison did a version with John Lee Hooker, and I guess is in 1993. And of course, but it didn't mention the Jimi Hendrix version. What the fudge?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, because I'm going to look that up right now, because that was, to me, probably one of the best versions of that song. Definitely was that. And the story behind that version was it was included as a separate single for the Essential Jimi Hendrix Volume 2.
Yeah, it wasn't really.
Yeah. It wasn't really official record there.
Right.
It was just, I don't know why they did it. I guess it was the length of time of the vinyl release, because side 2 had it concluded with the Star Spangled Banner, the full version of Machine Gun, and the Wild Thing performance from the Monterey Pop Festival.
Which was another great cover.
Absolutely there. More outstanding cover, Wild Thing. Outstanding was, that's when he was smashed his guitar and set it on fire. What's kind of funny is that the Who didn't want to go on after Hendrix, and Hendrix didn't want to go on after the Who, but it didn't matter. Both Townsend and Hendrix would become friends, and both bands would merge from that festival superstars. Definitely.
Okay, here's another debut album.
Mm-hmm.
Features probably the best singer ever,
Yeah.
and another guy that went on to have a good solo career.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Marriott, Peter Frampton,
Humble Pie.
Humble Pie.
Yep. And it was
On their
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
On their first album, they have a song that's got an interesting title: "One-Eyed Trouser Snake Rumba."
Mm.
Think about that one.
Okay, there. I think we know what they're talking about there, definitely.
Yeah, it's kind
Yep.
of like okay.
Yeah, remember
And
at
this
that
was
time. But I remember at that time, bands couldn't really come out and say it, say what they're meaning.
right,
They had to give little details. They like to let the listeners figure it out, what they're
like
talking
sucking
about.
on
So,
the sweet wine or
yep,
sweet vine.
yep.
Wow. And they did a cover on this first album of I'm Ready, which they later did on the Live at Fillmore,
Mm-hmm.
which is absolutely phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives you an idea of just how good Steve Marriott was as a vocalist.
Yeah,
This band had two good vocalists.
yep. Frampton and Marriott.
Yep.
Yep.
Marriott came from the Small Faces.
Yes. And of course, which later become the Faces, featuring Rod Stewart as their frontman.
Right.
And then Rod Stewart, I guess, he put out his first record, Every Picture Tells a Story, with the title cut, the cover of I Know I'm Losing You, the Temptation song, as well as, of course,
Yeah.
Maggie May.
That was a good debut album.
Yeah. Still gets played on the classic rock circuit to this very day, believe it or not.
Well, with a little research, I could have done even more on the debut albums.
Right.
Hey, here's another one. Strawberry Alarm Clock.
Oh, yeah. The band that did Incense and Peppermints. That's the only song I know from them, I'm just for sure. But I'm sure the record had a lot more goodies on there.
Oh, tons of them. On my Patreon, I actually cover it and play little pieces of it.
Ah, nice. And by the way, we got to mention Ark has a Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Arknolia. Listen to sign up and listen to all the episodes that Ark has done, including a couple that me, YR, and Keith had participated on. Definitely
Yeah,
want
I've
to
got
check that
over
out.
60 music ones.
Yeah, absolutely. He also covers sports, other entertainment, movies, TV shows there. We got to definitely sign up for it if you get the chance, people. Well, never screw the chance. Do it now when you're still alive.
I would appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. All the
And
money
you could
goes.
hear little pieces of the stuff. Because one of the things I'm doing there too is I'm counting down Billboard, the top 20 for a particular year.
Mm-hmm.
Started in 1960 and I'm up to 1973, I believe.
All right.
And then I went back and I started with 21 through 40 for 60, 61, 62, and 63. And I'm going to continue that.
Yep.
And I'm also doing significant songs of each of those years that didn't make the top 40, but were still songs worth mentioning.
All right.
But Strawberry Alarm Clock actually had a lot of good music, but the one everybody knows is Incense and Peppermints.
Yeah, that's the thing. That thing we got to. That's another subject we got to talk about. Bands that people only know one song by.
Right, even though they have others.
I know exactly, but the people just focus on, like, for example, Percy Sledge. We know his song "When a Man Loves a Woman," but do we know any other songs from them?
Right, and then you got Bobby Fuller 4, I Fought the Law.
Absolutely.
But he had other good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. People, we gotta definitely dig it deep into that sometime. Probably when YR comes, probably on the next episode.
Fox Tops the Letter.
Yep.
And they actually had a bunch of good songs.
Exactly. I know Richie Blackmore has said at one time said that and they did other songs other than "Smoke of the Water," but if people want to keep talking about that song, that's okay.
Yeah. There's a lot more stuff that was just phenomenal.
All right, yeah. So we got to dig deep in that probably in next week there.
Yeah. Oh, I need to find out your schedule anyway.
Yeah, by the way, I have Wednesdays and Thursdays off, by the way. It's the same as I did back in Texas there for the past
Oh,
15 months there, which is pretty good there.
yeah. I wondered why you didn't call on Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, basically, I thought it was going to be Monday and Tuesday that I had off there for my current line of work, but they decided to switch on. Decided, oh, let's give them Thursdays and Wednesdays or Thursdays off, basically. There, I said, okay. So basically, I'm doing my thing there. Which, by the way, I got to give credit to the staff up there. They're pretty good. They're pretty nice. It was and the line of work I'm doing right now there, which is kind of different what they did back in the Texas location, is kind of like more easier, a lot more stable, a
Hmm.
lot more interesting there. I'm learning new stuff. I'm working in the meat department, by the way, folks, and
Ah,
no, there's no meat grinders or shop knives involved in this line of work. That's somewhere else there at other supermarket venues there.
yeah. And I guess then our next one's on Wednesday.
Yes, definitely most show. Hoping YR be back, be back in full stride there. If not, then of course we'll continue with them without them there. Keith as
Well, on
well.
Wednesday, I'd like to continue with this.
Debut album stuff.
Yeah, because we didn't nearly cover.
Okay, definitely. We'll definitely do that for sure, man.
Gives me a little time to research too.
All right, there's.
Uh, I had something else I was going to say. What was it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I guess we can, if that doesn't fill the show,
All right.
we can do the bizarre
All right.
songs that are unusual, that don't fit the mold, you might say.
Yeah.
Let's see, what would be a good example of what I'm trying to. Well, The Crazy World of Arthur Brown, Fire.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There. That was a whacked out one.
But I think that would be interesting to see what you come up with and what I come up with,
All right, there.
because I can think of a few.
Oh, we got to throw out this debut album from '65, The Mothers of Invention, Freak
Right.
Out. First
That
double album that came out.
Help I'm a Rock.
Yeah, that's right. Oh yeah. Who Are the Brain Police?
Oh,
Hungry,
that's a great song.
Hungry Freaks Daddy. And you could tell right away this Frank Zappa guy at that time was like something else there because he wrote a lot of things from the heart.
Was, was the song titled The Son of the Monster Magnet or Return of the Son of the Monster Magnet?
It was the second one there, The Return of the Son of
That's what I
Monster
thought.
Magnet. That was a tripped out piece to listen to. That took up the whole side of
Susie?
side 4.
Susie Cream Cheese.
Yep. It's your voice, your conscience, baby. And I just want to know Susie, what's gotten into you?
Yeah, that's a great song.
And you got to, if you ever find this album on vinyl, in fact, I'm surprised that none of his stuff is on vinyl, Frank Zappa's that is. But then again, Frank Zappa had so many massive albums out there. It would take
Yeah.
forever to get them all remastered and reissued on vinyl. That's for sure. But definitely should definitely check that album out for Shizzle. 65's Freak Out.
Yep, great album. Great album.
Absolutely there. Like I said, the first double album to make it onto the market there.
Well, if you get a chance, go on there and check out the Strawberry Alarm Clock, because I kind of covered 2 or 3 of their albums, actually.
All right there. All right there. I'll definitely do that later on tonight. That's for sure there. All right. So I guess it concludes our show for today there. For the
Yeah.
time. All right there. All right. So tune in next Wednesday at the same time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Me and Arknolia will continue our debut album discussion there. And hope YR is doing okay. Hope Keith is doing okay as well there. All right. All right.
Right.
It's all right. So for Arknolia and myself, enjoy